Welcome to The Sleepy Scientist, a place where science slows down and settles into calm rhythms, perfect for the quiet moments before sleep. Tonight's journey is all about energy, not the restless kind that keeps you awake at night, but the kind that flows silently through every part of the universe, shaping life, motion, and even thought itself. Before we begin, I would love to know where you're listening from. Are you tucked into bed in a quiet room, perhaps in a city glowing with lights, or maybe somewhere far from noise where the stars shine brightly? If you're new here, I kindly ask you to give the video a like and subscribe. It helps more than you know, and to those of you who are already subscribed, thank you for being part of this gentle corner of science and rest. I often say that I hope these videos aren't so interesting that they keep you awake. But if curiosity does win out, at least you'll drift through the night with a few new ideas humming softly in your mind. So let us begin. If energy is the one true currency of the universe, what exactly does that mean? And how does it quietly shape every part of your existence? Energy can feel like an abstract idea, a word you've heard in classrooms or seen written on a utility bill. Yet it is something far more fundamental, more intimate and more universal than those passing contexts suggest. Imagine it not as a cold scientific concept, but as the unseen current that links the turning of galaxies to the beating of your own heart. Energy is not just a feature of the world, it is the silent language through which the universe speaks. To understand energy as a currency, picture the way money flows through human life. It changes hands, it takes many forms, it is stored, borrowed, spent, and sometimes wasted. Now replace every coin and every banknote with light, heat, motion, or chemical bonds, and you begin to see what scientists mean when they call energy the ability to do work. From the birth of stars to the spark of thought in your brain, energy is constantly being exchanged, never created out of nothing, never truly lost, only moving and transforming, like a great circulation of wealth across existence. This perspective allows us to see connections we might otherwise miss. The bread you eat in the morning is sunlight stored in grain. The phone in your hand glows with the concentrated energy of distant fuels, and the rhythm of your breath is powered by ancient cellular coins called ATP. You are in every way a participant in the greatest economy of all, the ceaseless trade of energy. Throughout this journey, we will follow energy as it takes on different disguises. We will see how it first appeared in human thought as fire and sunlight, how it shaped the rise of civilizations, how it still powers every heartbeat and every city street lamp, and how it flows far beyond Earth into the great banks of stars. Each chapter will trace the way energy is budgeted, exchanged, and sometimes squandered, until we arrive at the farthest horizons of entropy and the poetry of impermanence. As you settle deeper into rest, you might begin to notice something gentle in this story. That energy is not just a scientific concept, but a reflection of existence itself. You do not own it, you only borrow it for a time, spending it in steps and breaths, returning it again when your part in the exchange is done. And so, the question that will guide us through, if energy truly is the only real wealth, what does it mean to live in a universe where every heartbeat, every star, and every dream is bought and paid for with the same invisible coin? Energy is a word that drifts easily through everyday conversation. People talk about feeling energetic in the morning or running out of energy at the end of a long day. The word has been borrowed by poets, borrowed by spiritual teachers, and borrowed again by scientists. Yet behind all these uses is something far more subtle and fundamental, something that underpins every event in the universe. To speak of energy is to speak of the hidden thread that ties everything together. Scientists often describe energy in a deceptively simple way, the ability to do work. At first that sounds straightforward, perhaps even a little dull, but hidden in that short phrase is an entire world of meaning. Work, in the scientific sense, is not just a job or a task. It is the shifting of reality itself. lifting a stone, stretching a bowstring, or sending an electron down a wire. Each is a transformation, a rearrangement of the world, and what makes that rearrangement possible is energy. Without it, there is no motion, no change, no life, only stillness. The beauty of energy lies in its invisibility. You cannot see energy itself, only its effects. A flame flickers because chemical bonds are breaking and reforming, releasing light and heat. A river surges downhill because gravity lends water its momentum. A child laughs because the food eaten earlier has been transformed into a burst of muscular contraction and sound. In each case, energy has slipped quietly from one form to another, almost like a magician who vanishes just as the trick is performed. Think of a simple apple. At a glance, it is just fruit on a table, yet within that apple is sunlight, captured and stored as sugars by a tree's leaves. When you take a bite, you're not just eating, you're withdrawing energy from a vault the tree built for you, a vault filled with the light of the sun. This transaction is so ordinary, we forget how astonishing it is. Every breath and every heartbeat is part of a vast, seamless system of exchanges where energy passes invisibly from place to place. Energy's universality is what makes it extraordinary. It is in the warmth of a sunbeam and the chill of deep space. It flows in rivers and in blood vessels, in the roar of volcanoes and in the quiet hum of thought. The very stars scattered across the sky are immense furnaces where energy is constantly minted and spent. Whether you're watching the waves of an ocean or the flicker of a candle, you're watching energy in action. The forms change endlessly, yet the essence remains constant, a capacity for change that never disappears, only shifts. One of the mysteries of energy is that it is always on the move. It cannot be trapped forever. It insists on flowing, transferring, and transforming. A stone warmed in the sun will give its heat back to the evening air. A wound spring must eventually unwind. Even the most perfect battery will in time release its charge. This constant motion makes energy feel less like a thing and more like a conversation, an ongoing dialogue between matter and motion, between order and disorder. What makes this conversation profound is its persistence. The energy that keeps your heart beating tonight is, in a very real sense, ancient. The carbohydrates you consume are assembled from atoms forged in stars that lived and died billions of years ago. The sunlight stored in grains or fruits has travelled across space for 8 minutes before arriving on Earth, where it becomes food, warmth, or growth. You're quite literally stitched together by energy that once illuminated ancient skies. Yet for all its power, energy is elusive. It slips through the fingers of language, defying any attempt to pin it down too neatly. It can be measured, counted, harnessed, and yet the essence of it remains mysterious. Energy is not a substance, not a material you can hold. It is a relationship, a potential, a promise of what can be done. To describe it as the ability to do work is accurate, but it also feels like calling love a chemical reaction. True, yet not nearly enough. There is something quietly humbling about realizing that every movement you make, every thought you have, every dream you drift into tonight is carried on the back of this unseen thread. Energy does not announce itself, and yet it never fails. It is in the rhythm of tides, in the arc of planets, in the firefly's glow, and the crackle of lightning. It does not take sides. It does not pause. It does not grow tired. It simply moves, shifts, and sustains. Perhaps the most calming way to think of energy is as the gentle pulse of existence. It asks for nothing, yet it gives everything. It's the quiet current beneath the noise of life, binding the smallest atom to the grandest galaxy. Invisible, everywhere, and always in motion, energy is the thread that holds the fabric of reality together, weaving endlessly without ever being seen. To notice it is to realize that even in stillness, there is a hidden hum, a background rhythm that makes the universe possible. It is the quiet wealth you carry in every breath, the silent companion in every heartbeat, the endless flow that turns existence from emptiness into something vibrant, shifting, and alive. Long before equations and laboratories, human beings were already experts at noticing energy. They might not have called it that, but they saw its presence in fire, in sunlight, in the invisible breath that stirred a chest and then vanished again. To them, energy was not a number on a chalkboard, but a living force, something divine, mysterious, and essential. It was life itself. Imagine the first time our ancestors tamed fire. A flicker of flame meant warmth in a cold night, safety from prowling beasts, and the power to transform raw food into something softer, safer, and richer. Fire was more than survival. It was a miracle, and it seemed alive. It danced, consumed, and roared. Yet it could also vanish into smoke and ash if left unattended. To early humans, fire must have seemed like a spirit, half-tamed, always demanding respect. In their eyes, it was not unreasonable to think of fire as a gift from the gods. After all, without it, life was colder, shorter, and far more dangerous. Then there was the sun, that blazing golden certainty in the sky. Long before telescopes revealed it as a nuclear furnace, people understood that the sun was the source of everything good. Crops only grew under its light, animals thrived with its warmth, and the rhythms of life itself followed its rising and setting. For ancient farmers, the sun was the difference between feast and famine. Entire civilizations aligned their calendars, rituals, and monuments to its path. Temples and pyramids cast shadows in perfect harmony with the solstices, a way of both honoring and keeping track of this celestial benefactor. It is no wonder that so many cultures worship the sun. And in truth, modern science has revealed that they were not wrong. All life on Earth really does flow from the steady generosity of that star. Sun worshippers, it turns out, had a point. Beyond fire and sun, ancient people also spoke of something subtler, life force. The Greeks called it pneuma, the vital breath that animated living beings. In India, it was prana, the current that flowed through all creatures. In China, it was qi, a balancing energy that maintained harmony in body and cosmos. These traditions were not built on measurements and experiments, but on observation, intuition, and reflection. People noticed that when breath stopped, life ended. They felt that vitality pulsed invisibly, like a river beneath the surface of the world, connecting all things. Even in mythologies far apart, the same themes echoed. The gods of Egypt sailed across the sky with the sun. The Aztecs believed the universe itself required a steady payment of energy, offered through ritual and sacrifice to keep the cosmos alive. The Norse spoke of a great fire and ice that shaped the world's beginning, primal energies colliding to form creation. Whether through ritual, story, or worship, people found countless ways to express an intuition. Existence was powered by something unseen, and that something deserved reverence. Humorously, you could say that much of ancient religion was humanity's first attempt at energy theory. When you do not have thermodynamics, you make myths. The logic was not far from today's science and spirit, even if the explanations were wrapped in poetry. Fire gave warmth, therefore a fire god must give blessings. The sun fed the fields, therefore a sun deity must be praised. Energy was divine accounting, a cycle that demanded balance and gratitude. Consider also how ancient architecture reflected this awe. Stone circles like Stonehenge, pyramids in Egypt, and temples across the Americas all align with the heavens. These were not random choices. They were physical prayers built in stone to harness and honor the patterns of energy that ruled their lives. Watching a sunrise strike the inner chamber of a temple at the exact moment of the equinox must have felt like proof that the universe listened and responded. The line between observation and worship was thin, and in that space humans found meaning. One of the charming things about these early interpretations is how they capture truths without the math. People sensed that energy moved in cycles. The sun rose and fell, seasons turned, breath flowed in and out, fire blazed and died. Life itself was a rhythm. Without speaking of conservation laws, ancient thinkers already believed in the importance of balance. Too much fire destroyed, too little left one cold. Too much sun scorched the crops, too little left them barren. Harmony was everything, and so energy became inseparable from vitality. To be strong was to be full of energy. To be sick was to be drained of it. To live was to participate in the cosmic current, and to die was to leave it behind. Rituals, medicines, and prayers all aimed at keeping that current flowing smoothly. Even today, many cultures still carry echoes of these beliefs in language. We speak of being energized, drained, recharged, or out of steam. Our ancestors might smile knowingly at the persistence of their metaphors. What is remarkable is how these ideas, while mystical in form, often align beautifully with modern understanding. The sun truly does sustain life. Breath is indeed the gateway for oxygen, without which cells cannot release energy. Fire, as controlled combustion, really is a cousin of the biochemical burning that happens inside every living cell. Without the formulas, people intuited the essentials. Energy is sacred, energy is life, and energy must be respected. Looking back, it is easy to chuckle at gods hurling thunderbolts or demanding offerings to keep the sun rising. But underneath the mythology was an earnest effort to make sense of an invisible thread that ran through everything. Ancient thinkers gave energy faces and names because it was too important, too mysterious, to leave undefined. It was their way of saying, here is the force that matters most, the heartbeat of the world, and perhaps that is why their stories still resonate. Energy, whether wrapped in the robes of a sun god or in the equations of a physicist, remains the same hidden vitality. It is the fire in the hearth, the glow in the sky, the breath in the lungs. It is both practical and profound. For the ancients, it was a gift from the divine. For us, it is a principle of physics, but in both cases, it is acknowledged as the invisible wealth that makes existence possible. So while we may not chant to the rising sun or offer incense to the hearth, the reverence lingers. Each time we bask in sunlight, light a candle, or take a deep breath, we are still part of that ancient recognition. Energy moves through us, sustains us, and connects us to everything that has ever lived. And deep down, humanity has always known it. When people talk about energy, they often imagine an endless supply, something that simply exists whenever we need it. Yet the universe runs on rules, and energy is no exception. Hidden beneath the workings of stars, engines, and even the tiniest cells are laws that govern every transaction. Physicists call them the laws of thermodynamics, but you might think of them as the terms and conditions of the universe's currency system. They are simple enough to state, yet vast enough to shape everything that happens. The first law is perhaps the most reassuring. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. Think of it as a cosmic promise that no matter what happens, the books are always balanced. If energy leaves one place, it shows up somewhere else. If it disappears from view, it has simply slipped into another form. A log burning in a fire becomes heat, light, and smoke. Food eaten at breakfast becomes muscle movement, warmth, and thought. Even the electricity flowing through a light bulb is not lost when the bulb goes out. It simply disperses as heat into the surrounding air. Nothing is wasted, nothing is truly gone. It is only transformed. In many ways, this first law is like a universal accountant recording every transfer. Imagine a great cosmic ledger where energy is the only currency. A galaxy spends its fuel to shine. A planet absorbs sunlight. A tree converts that sunlight into sugar, and a person takes a bite of the fruit. Every transaction is written neatly into the balance sheet. The total never changes. The amount of energy in the universe today is exactly the same as it was billions of years ago. It will be exactly the same billions of years into the future. The form of it may alter endlessly, but the sum remains constant. But if the first law reassures us with its stability, the second law complicates things. This is the law of entropy, and it states that while energy is never lost, it tends to spread out. Useful, concentrated energy is always moving toward less useful, more disordered forms. If the first law is the promise that the cosmic bank account never shrinks, the second law is the reminder that your savings inevitably get harder to spend. Entropy can sound intimidating, but it's easiest to think of it as the natural tendency toward messiness. A cup of hot tea will always cool down if left on a table, never the other way around. A carefully stacked pile of books will tumble into disorder if knocked over, and no gust of wind will ever rearrange them neatly. The energy is still there. The warmth of the tea is now in the surrounding air. The books still hold their potential weight, but it is dispersed, spread out, no longer as concentrated or as useful as before. In the language of money, the second law tells us that while you never lose a single coin from the cosmic bank account, those coins are constantly being broken down into smaller and smaller denominations, scattered across countless places, harder and harder to gather back into a single, spendable sum. Energy disperses, order declines, and the universe gently drifts toward greater entropy. This has profound consequences. Stars burn brightly because they're able to keep energy concentrated in their cores. But over time, their fuel spreads out, their fire fades, and they grow cold. Life itself depends on resisting entropy, constantly capturing concentrated energy, sunlight, food, fuel, to maintain order against the tide of disorder. The reason you must keep eating is not because the energy disappears, but because your body must keep gathering concentrated packets of it before they scatter away into unusable heat. Yet this law of dispersal is not a villain. Without entropy, nothing would ever change. It is the quiet current that allows time to flow in one direction. You can scramble an egg, but never unscramble it. You can watch smoke rise from a candle, but never see it leap back into solid wax. Entropy gives us the arrow of time, the sense that the past is distinct from the future. It is a kind of cosmic reminder that while energy is constant, its quality shifts, moving from organized, ready-to-use forms into diffuse, spread-out ones. To see these two laws working together, picture a fireplace on a winter night. The wood holds energy in the form of chemical bonds. Strike a match, and those bonds release their stored wealth, transforming into warmth and light. The room grows cozy. Your hands glow with heat. The first law guarantees that none of this energy is lost. It all still exists. The second law guarantees that the longer the fire burns, the more the heat spreads outward, until it eventually blends into the background air, indistinguishable from everything else. The transaction is complete, the book's balanced, but the spending power has faded. Physicists sometimes describe entropy as the cost of doing business in the universe. Every exchange has a fee. Machines lose energy as friction and heat. Stars radiate light that drifts away forever. Bodies radiate warmth into the night. You never truly lose the currency, but you can never spend it twice in the same way. It is a one-directional system, always moving toward dispersal. Perhaps the most poetic way to see it is as a story of abundance and impermanence. The universe is filled with energy, enough to sustain stars, planets, and life. Yet the same universe reminds us that concentrated energy cannot last forever. It will always spread, always soften, always fade into background hum. This is not cause for despair, but for perspective. Every moment of order, every spark, every flame, every breath is a temporary miracle purchased against the current of entropy. And so, energy becomes more than just a scientific concept. It is a cosmic currency system with strict, unbreakable rules. The first law promises eternal balance, assuring us that nothing is ever lost. The second law reminds us that value diminishes with time, that concentrated wealth scatters inevitably into a quieter, more uniform state. Together, they form the foundation of every story in the universe, from the flicker of a candle to the life cycle of galaxies. To live with these laws in mind is to see the world as a grand exchange. Every meal, every sunbeam, every flick of a switch is a transaction in the great cosmic ledger. The account never runs dry, but every withdrawal comes with a fee. And perhaps that is what gives energy its beauty. It is both eternal and fleeting, conserved yet fragile, a constant that slips through your fingers even as it sustains you. Energy, after all, is the ability to do work. And entropy is the reminder that every act of work carries with it the quiet price of change. Every morning, whether hidden behind clouds or blazing in clear skies, the sun rises and pours out a wealth of energy across the earth. It does this without calculation or hesitation, sending light across 93 million miles of space as though it were nothing at all. To our planet, the sun is more than a distant star. It is the investor whose generosity underwrites nearly every process of life. Without this steady influx, Earth would be silent, frozen, and empty. With it, the world flourishes into forests, oceans, and cities, all powered by a steady rain of photons. Sunlight is not just brightness and warmth. It is delivery of pure energy, a currency arriving daily in unimaginably vast sums. To put it into perspective, the Earth receives more energy from the sun in a single hour than humanity uses in an entire year. That is a fortune of wealth cascading constantly, and most of it flows quietly into the natural systems that sustain life. The first to seize this cosmic allowance were the plants. Through photosynthesis, they found a way to convert sunlight into stored energy, taking those weightless photons and transforming them into sugars. This is perhaps the most important transaction in the history of the planet. Plants are nature's bankers, receiving deposits of sunlight and locking them away in chemical bonds. The process is elegant in its simplicity. Carbon dioxide from the air, water from the ground, and sunlight from above are combined into glucose, with oxygen released as a byproduct. The oxygen fills the air we breathe, and the glucose fuels the growth of leaves, roots, and seeds. With this, the first great economy of life was established. From that moment on, every living thing on Earth has depended on this foundational exchange. Herbivores nibble at the stored energy in plants. Carnivores, in turn, consume the herbivores, and decomposers recycle what remains. Each step of the food chain is a transaction, moving sunlight's wealth from one form of life to another. A zebra grazing on grass is not just feeding, it is withdrawing from the solar account managed by plants. A lion feeding on the zebra is making a secondary withdrawal, and when the lion eventually dies, fungi and bacteria claim what is left, returning nutrients to the soil for the plants to reinvest. This endless circulation is what scientists call an ecosystem, but it could just as easily be called a marketplace of sunlight. What makes this system remarkable is its efficiency and balance. Plants do not hoard their wealth, but grow leaves and fruit that feed countless other species. Predators regulate populations so that the system does not collapse under its own abundance. Even waste is not wasted, as decomposers find value where others see none. The entire biosphere is a model of recycling, built on the single principle that energy cannot be created anew, but must be passed along. In this grand economy, sunlight is the currency, plants are the mint, and every creature is both spender and recipient. It is worth pausing to appreciate how miraculous this arrangement is. Light that began its journey in the sun's core, created through nuclear fusion billions of years ago, eventually travels through space, touches a green leaf, and becomes the sweetness of an apple or the nourishment of a grain of rice. The energy in your body right now can be traced back step by step to photons born in a star. When you run, speak, or dream, you are spending sunlight that has been carefully transformed and stored for you by life on Earth. The idea of the sun as an investor is more than metaphor. Plants are not only keeping themselves alive, they're underwriting entire systems. Rainforests, with their towering canopies and teeming life, are perhaps the best example of this wealth in action. Every layer of the forest is a living demonstration of how far sunlight can be stretched when invested wisely. Tiny insects, colourful birds, prowling cats, and countless unseen microbes all share in the bounty, each playing its part in the distribution. The energy flows through the ecosystem like currency through a thriving economy, always moving, always exchanged. Even in the oceans, where the sun's light fades after a few hundred meters, its influence still dominates. Microscopic algae and plankton capture sunlight near the surface, forming the base of a food web that supports whales, sharks, and everything in between. Entire marine ecosystems rise and fall on the invisible scaffolding built by sunlight. Without it, oceans would be barren deserts of salt water, silent and still. With it, they become living tapestries of motion and colour. Humans, too, are deeply tied to this solar economy. Agriculture is nothing more than a sophisticated way of harnessing sunlight through plants. The wheat in bread, the rice in bowls, the vegetables on a plate, all are direct products of photosynthesis. Livestock are simply middlemen, consuming solar-stored energy and delivering it in another form. When societies began farming, they were essentially learning to manage their solar investments more carefully, ensuring a steady income of calories. Cities, cultures, and civilizations grew upon this dependable foundation of sunlight converted into food. Even the fuels we burn today are, at their root, ancient sunlight. Coal, oil, and natural gas are the compressed remains of plants and microorganisms that captured solar energy millions of years ago. When we burn them, we are spending savings accounts left behind by prehistoric ecosystems. It is like raiding an old trust fund set aside by the deep past. The warmth of a fire, the hum of a car engine, the glow of a street lamp, all are echoes of sunlight that once fell on forests and seas in ages long gone. This perspective makes clear that the sun is not just another star in the sky. It is the heartbeat of Earth's systems, the primary investor in life's enterprise. Every blade of grass, every forest, every coral reef, every meal on a plate exists because of this continuous flow of radiant energy. And unlike any human investor, the sun never misses a payment. For billions of years, it has delivered its allowance with unwavering reliability, shaping the trajectory of life itself. What is perhaps most enchanting is that the sun asks for nothing in return. It does not keep track of interest or demand repayment. It simply shines steadily and abundantly, releasing wealth across space. The Earth in turn has become an astonishingly creative portfolio, using that steady investment to grow, diversify, and flourish in ways that still surprise us. To sit in the warmth of a sunny afternoon is to feel this cosmic economy at work. The light on your skin is the same light that fuels forests, swells oceans with currents, and powers the tiny engines inside every leaf. It is not just warmth, not just brightness. It is the quiet gift that sustains every story unfolding on this planet, a gift delivered faithfully across the gulf of space, every day, without fail. Inside every living cell, hidden far below the scale of eyesight, there is a constant hum of activity. Proteins fold, membranes shift, signals spark, and molecules shuffle back and forth in endless patterns. Yet none of this happens for free. Just as a city needs coins and bills to keep its marketplaces running, a cell needs a currency to pay for every action. That currency is a molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, often described as the coin of the realm in the economy of life. ATP is small, fleeting, and versatile. It is built with 3 phosphate groups, each carrying a charge that pushes against the others like compressed springs. Break one of those bonds, and a packet of energy is released. This is why ATP is so useful. It is a currency that can be spent in tiny controlled amounts. Cells do not need to light a bonfire every time they move a molecule. They only need to break a bond in ATP. It is like having pockets full of small change rather than carrying a single gold ingot. With coins, you can buy what you need when you need it. Every second, each of your trillions of cells is producing and spending ATP. The scale of it is staggering. The average human body turns over its own weight in ATP every single day. You might imagine coins jingling endlessly in invisible wallets, exchanged from one molecular machine to another. A pump pushing sodium ions across a membrane spends a few coins. A muscle fibre contracting to lift your arm demands thousands more. Even the act of forming thoughts in your brain comes with a steady rain of ATP transactions. To understand how this budget works, it helps to think of metabolism as a grand marketplace inside the cell. Food you eat becomes the raw material, broken down into glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids. These are like deposits arriving in the bank. Through a series of biochemical pathways, glycolysis, the citric acid cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation, that raw energy is processed, bundled, and converted into ATP coins. Once minted, those coins are immediately available for spending. There is no vault where ATP is stored long term. The cell produces it and spends it almost instantly, keeping the economy flowing at all times. One of the most impressive parts of this system is how finely tuned it is. Cells do not waste energy if they can help it. They budget carefully, turning down the production of ATP when activity slows, and ramping it up when demand rises. Sprinting, for instance, is like a sudden rush on the bank, and your cells scramble to print more ATP to pay the rising bills of your muscles. Resting quietly, the demand eases, and the system returns to a steady hum. If ATP is the coin, then the mitochondria are the mint. These tiny organelles, sometimes called the powerhouses of the cell, are where the majority of ATP is produced. Inside them, electrons stripped from food molecules are passed along a chain of proteins, releasing energy step by step. That energy drives the creation of a proton gradient, a kind of invisible dam of charged particles. The flow of protons back across the mitochondrial membrane spins a molecular machine called ATP synthase, which cranks out fresh ATP coins. It is a breathtakingly elegant system, microscopic turbines running endlessly, fueled by food and oxygen, powering life one coin at a time. What makes this system so calming to contemplate is its continuity. Right now, as you breathe in, oxygen slips into your lungs, binds to red blood cells, and travels to tissues where mitochondria await. There, it acts as the final receiver of electrons, allowing the whole chain to keep flowing. Without oxygen, the mint grinds to a halt, and ATP production dwindles. This is why oxygen feels so vital. It is the quiet guarantor of your cell's economy, the unseen auditor that keeps the books balanced. Cells also know how to diversify their income streams. Glucose may be the preferred fuel, but fats and proteins can also be broken down and fed into the cycle. When food is scarce, cells dip into reserves, converting stored fat into ATP. When activity is intense, they may borrow through fermentation, producing ATP rapidly though less efficiently, like taking out a short-term loan. Every strategy is aimed at one thing: keeping the coins flowing, because life cannot tolerate bankruptcy at the cellular level. Metabolism in this sense is a series of trades and exchanges. A neuron spends ATP to fire a signal, which helps you move a muscle, which in turn spends more ATP to contract. The warmth of your body on a chilly night is nothing more than countless ATP coins being cashed in to maintain temperature. Even when you're lying perfectly still, your cells are spending continually, repairing damage, maintaining order, and keeping membranes balanced. Rest is never truly rest on the cellular scale. It is simply a quieter marketplace. It is tempting to imagine ATP as money minted only for human cells, but in truth it is the universal currency of life. Plants, fungi, bacteria, and animals all rely on the same coin. produced in slightly different ways, but always with the same goal: to pay for work. This universality is one of biology's great mysteries and beauties. Somewhere in the deep past, cells discovered ATP as their preferred coin, and the system worked so well that evolution never abandoned it. Billions of years later, every living thing still pays with the same currency. And just as in human economies, efficiency matters. Some cells are thrifty, stretching their ATP budgets carefully, while others spend lavishly. A hummingbird, for instance, burns through ATP at a furious rate just to keep its wings vibrating fast enough to hover. A seed lying dormant underground may spend almost nothing, hoarding its reserves until the moment of growth arrives. Life is endlessly inventive in how it manages its accounts, but always within the same framework of coin and exchange. There is something quietly reassuring in knowing that, deep within your body, a hidden marketplace is at work, one so consistent that it unites every living being. Each breath of oxygen, each bite of food, is translated into the same coins, spent tirelessly on the work of being alive. You are, without ever realizing it, the sum of countless invisible transactions, a living economy powered by the smallest and most versatile wallet of all. ATP may be measured in molecules and bonds, but to think of it simply as currency makes it both accessible and poetic. It is the coin spent on every heartbeat, every memory, every dream. A single molecule may be small, but multiplied across the trillions of cells in your body, it becomes a vast wealth, one that is minted and spent second by second, unceasingly, as long as you live. Energy in the cell is not just chemistry, it is the hidden foundation of existence, the steady exchange that makes life possible. Life on Earth runs on energy, and the way that energy moves is through a chain of transactions. From the tiniest blades of grass to the largest predators, every living being is part of a grand economy, passing along sunlight that was first captured by plants. These exchanges are not random. They follow an order, an invisible accounting system where producers create wealth, consumers spend it, and decomposers recycle what remains. The producers are the foundation. Plants, algae, and certain bacteria take in sunlight and store it as sugars. They are the great investors in this economy, minting energy that all other creatures depend upon. Without producers, no other life could exist. The grass in a field, the kelp in the ocean, the leaves of a tree, they are the beginning of the food chain, quietly banking solar energy day after day. Consumers are the next link. Herbivores step in first, feeding directly on plants and turning their stored sunlight into muscle, fat, and movement. A rabbit nibbling clover or a cow grazing in a meadow is, in fact, cashing out a portion of the sun's investment. Yet only a fraction of the energy in the plant is transferred. Much of it is lost as heat during digestion, some is spent on the animal's own life processes, and only a portion remains stored as biomass that can be passed on. When a fox eats the rabbit or a person drinks milk from the cow, they are receiving what is left of the original solar wealth. This is why food chains form pyramids. At each level, energy diminishes. Plants may capture 1,000 units of sunlight, but herbivores pass on only a small share of that to carnivores, and carnivores pass on less still to top predators. By the time you reach the lion on the savannah or the shark in the ocean, the original sunlight has been whittled down to a thin slice. Each step in the chain involves loss, as heat and motion spend much of the energy before it can be handed on. It explains a simple truth about life. There can never be as many predators as there are plants. The system simply cannot afford it. A forest may host countless leaves, fewer deer, and even fewer wolves. An ocean may teem with plankton, sustain schools of fish, and support only a small number of sharks. The pyramid is unavoidable, because energy is always leaking away, never passed along in full. Decomposers form the final group, and they are often overlooked, though they play perhaps the most essential role of all. Fungi, bacteria, and scavengers step in to handle what no one else consumes. A fallen tree, a carcass on the savannah, or the waste left behind by other creatures is not lost energy. Decomposers break it down, recycle the nutrients, and return them to the soil and water, where producers can begin the process anew. Without decomposers, the world would drown in its own leftovers, and the chain would grind to a halt. They are the quiet accountants, keeping the books balanced and ensuring nothing of value is wasted. This cycle has some amusing consequences. Take the case of lions. A lion cannot live on salad, not because plants lack energy, but because the lion's digestive system is not designed to extract it efficiently. Herbivores are specialists at breaking down tough plant fibers, often with the help of microbes in their guts. Cows and deer carry complex stomachs that allow them to slowly harvest calories from grass. Lions, on the other hand, are designed for meat. Their bodies can absorb concentrated energy quickly, but only after herbivores have already done the hard work of processing the plants. If a lion tried to live on lettuce, it would starve, not from lack of energy in the leaves, but from inability to unlock it. In a way, lions outsource digestion to herbivores, waiting for them to do the farming before cashing in on the profits. The inefficiency of energy transfer also shapes ecosystems. If energy passed along perfectly, the world might be filled with predators in equal numbers to prey. Instead, balance emerges. Grasslands must stretch wide to feed herds of zebras, and those herds in turn can support only a few prides of lions. The limitations are not cruel, they are simply the mathematics of energy loss. This is why top predators are often rare, why their survival depends on vast areas of land or sea, and why their disappearance can ripple through the system in profound ways. Energy chains also reveal how connected everything is. A forest leaf captures sunlight, a caterpillar eats the leaf, a bird eats the caterpillar, and a hawk eats the bird. At each stage, energy shifts shape, never vanishing but always spreading, dispersing, and diminishing. When the hawk eventually dies, decomposers return the matter to the soil, feeding the trees that will grow new leaves. The chain is not a line, but a cycle, a circle of exchanges that stretches back billions of years and will continue long after any individual life is gone. Humans, of course, are part of these chains as well. Eating plants makes us primary consumers. Eating meat makes us secondary or even tertiary consumers. Our choices about diet determine how directly we tap into the sun's energy. Eating a loaf of bread means drawing closer to the source, while eating a steak means stepping further up the chain, where much of the original energy has already been spent. This is why feeding livestock requires so much land and food. The conversion rate from sunlight to grain to cow to human is far less efficient than eating plants directly. It is all a matter of how many hands the energy has passed through before it reaches us. Despite all these inefficiencies, the system works beautifully. Energy does not need to move perfectly to sustain life. It only needs to flow, to keep circulating through producers, consumers, and decomposers in a rhythm that balances itself. Forests thrive, savannas roar with life, oceans shimmer with schools of fish, all because sunlight finds its way into plants, and then into the endless procession of creatures. To step back and see this pattern is to glimpse the elegance of Earth's economy. The sun pays its daily investment, producers mint it into sugars, consumers spend it in motion, decomposers recycle it, and the cycle repeats. Nothing is truly wasted, though much is lost at each step, and the pyramid of life reflects this truth. Every bird's song, every predator's chase, every quiet bloom of algae is part of the same flowing current of energy. It is humbling to realize that every meal you have ever eaten is a piece of this chain, a transaction that began with the sun and traveled through living beings before arriving on your plate. The energy keeping you alive tonight was once light streaming through space, caught by a green leaf, passed along step by step until it became part of you. You're both spender and recipient in the ancient marketplace of life, a participant in the endless passing of the currency along. Evolution is often told as a story of survival, adaptation, and chance. Yet beneath the drama of predators and prey, of wings and scales, of intelligence and instinct lies a quieter story, the story of energy. Every living being is shaped by the demands of energy, how to gather it, how to store it, and how to spend it. Evolution is, in many ways, the history of life's budgeting strategies, the endless experimentation with ways to make the most out of limited resources. Consider the body itself. Every shape, size, and structure is a reflection of energetic trade-offs. Large animals have the advantage of strength and longevity, but they require immense amounts of food to keep their bulk moving. Small animals, on the other hand, need less food, but they burn through it quickly, living life in a blur of activity. Neither strategy is inherently better. Both are ways of balancing the books in life's grand accounting system. Dinosaurs offer a spectacular example of how energy demands sculpt forms. Take the sauropods, those enormous long-necked giants like Brachiosaurus. Their sheer size demanded enormous energy intake, yet their long necks were a clever adaptation, allowing them to graze across wide areas of vegetation without needing to move their massive bodies constantly. By standing in one place and sweeping their heads like cranes over treetops, they minimized the energy cost of locomotion. On the other end of the spectrum were the predatory theropods, like the iconic Tyrannosaurus rex. Their sharp teeth and powerful jaws were not just weapons but tools designed for efficiency, delivering high-energy meals in concentrated packages. For a predator that size, chasing down prey recklessly would have been wasteful. It had to be selective, conserving its energy until the right opportunity arose. Then there were the smaller, feathered dinosaurs, ancestors of modern birds. Some evolved lightweight bodies and efficient respiratory systems, innovations that reduced the cost of flight. Flight itself is an expensive activity in terms of energy, but it offers access to new food sources and habitats. In a sense, wings were a gamble in life's energy economy. Burn more in the short term, but open new opportunities that pay dividends in the long run. If dinosaurs demonstrate the extremes of size and strategy, hummingbirds show us energy pushed to its limits in miniature. A hummingbird's wings beat up to 80 times per second, suspending the bird in mid-air as it sips nectar. This lifestyle requires such a high metabolic rate that hummingbirds must eat almost constantly, consuming more than their own body weight in nectar each day. To support this, their bodies have evolved rapid digestion, efficient oxygen delivery, and hearts that can beat more than 1,000 times per minute. At night, when flowers are closed and the air cools, hummingbirds enter a state of torpor, a kind of energy-saving mode where their metabolism slows dramatically. Without this nightly budgeting trick, they would not survive until morning. Every day is a tightrope walk between intake and expenditure, and evolution has sculpted the hummingbird into a master of high-speed, high-risk energy economics. Humans tell yet another version of the story. Our species is unusual in that our brains consume a staggering portion of our energy budget. While the brain makes up only a small fraction of body mass, it can use up to 1/5 of the body's energy at rest. That means every thought, every memory, every spark of creativity is an expensive luxury, bought with calories harvested from the environment. To support this enormous demand, humans developed unique adaptations. Walking upright freed the hands for tool use, which in turn allowed more efficient food gathering and hunting. Cooking made food easier to digest, delivering more calories with less effort. Social cooperation reduced risks and improved access to resources. Each step in human evolution can be seen as a strategy to secure and manage the energy needed to support our ravenous brains. Energy also shapes behavior as much as anatomy. Predators calculate the energy cost of hunting against the payoff of a meal. Too much effort chasing prey that escapes is wasted currency. Grazing animals must move in ways that balance the search for food with the constant need for vigilance against predators. Migratory species undertake long journeys, not for the thrill of travel, but for the energy advantages of breeding grounds and seasonal resources. Even courtship rituals, those elaborate dances, songs and displays are energetic advertisements, signals that an individual is strong and efficient enough to spare resources for beauty or extravagance. Survival, then, is not just about who is the strongest or fastest, but about who is the most efficient. A cheetah, for instance, can sprint faster than almost any animal on land, but those sprints are short because they burn immense amounts of energy. If a chase does not end quickly in success, the cheetah is left exhausted and vulnerable. Meanwhile, scavengers like hyenas may expend less energy, relying on teamwork and persistence to secure food. Both strategies work, but both are constrained by the same rule: never spend more than you gain. Evolution weeds out the wasteful. Even plants are shaped by energy economics. Desert cacti conserve water and reduce leaf surface area to minimize losses, while broad-leafed rainforest plants spread wide to catch as much light as possible in shady understories. The shapes of leaves, the thickness of bark, the timing of flowers, all are forms of budgeting, ways of maximizing returns in particular environments. Life, whether rooted or roaming, is always adjusting the balance sheet. The principle can be summarized simply: evolution favors those who budget energy wisely. The hummingbird survives by pushing metabolism to extremes, balanced by nightly torpor. The lion thrives by conserving energy, resting most of the day and hunting strategically. Humans prosper by finding ways to stretch calories further, turning raw resources into cooked meals, shared hunts, and cultivated fields. It is strangely poetic to realize that survival itself is a kind of economics. Every creature is born into a world where energy is limited, and every adaptation is a line in the ledger. Wings, claws, teeth, roots, brains, they are investments shaped by the need to gather, store, and spend wisely. The forms we see today, from the tiniest hummingbird to the largest whale, are the winners of countless experiments in budgeting. And in this story, energy is not just a force that powers life, but the sculptor that shapes it. Every feather, every scale, every stride and heartbeat is a reflection of how life has learned to balance the books. Evolution is not random chaos, but a long negotiation with energy, a slow and steady agreement that determines what thrives, what fades, and what forms persist across the ages. To live is to spend, and to endure is to budget well. There are moments in human history that changed everything, turning survival into something richer, something more expansive. One of the greatest of these turning points came not with tools of stone or wheels of wood, but with the taming of fire. Fire was more than a flickering light in the dark. It was humanity's first true energy revolution, a discovery that unlocked new possibilities and reshaped the course of our species. At first glance, fire seems simple: dry wood, a spark, and flames. But to early humans it was both miracle and mystery. Fire could devour forests in terrifying blazes, yet it could also be coaxed into a controlled blaze that warmed the night. It could destroy, and it could protect. Most importantly, it could transform food. Cooking was the first great energy hack, allowing humans to unlock calories more efficiently than ever before. Raw food carries nutrients, but it also requires enormous effort to chew, digest, and extract. By cooking meat or plants, humans broke down tough fibers and proteins, softening food and making its calories easier to absorb. More energy in, less energy wasted. It was the kind of breakthrough evolution loves. This advantage was not small. Anthropologists suggest that cooking may have provided the extra energy needed to support the growth of larger brains. A raw diet demands hours of chewing and digestion, leaving little spare energy for anything else. But a cooked diet delivers calories quickly, freeing up time and resources for new behaviors, for tool making, for socializing, for planning. In that sense, roasted roots and charred meat may have fueled not only bodies but minds. If modern humans sometimes rely on coffee or energy drinks to get through the day, our ancestors discovered something far more potent: energy drinks had nothing on roasted mammoth. Beyond food, fire offered warmth. In cold climates, it turned inhospitable landscapes into survivable homes. It allowed humans to migrate into regions where icy winds blew and snow covered the ground. A simple flame meant comfort, protection, and endurance. Where animals were bound to their environments, humans could carry fire with them, reshaping the boundaries of where life was possible. With fire, caves became homes, nights became safer, and winters became bearable. Fire was also a shield. The flicker of flames kept predators at bay, turning vulnerable groups of humans into formidable defenders. Wolves might circle, but they hesitated before the glowing wall of fire. A campfire was not just warmth. It was a fortress, a symbol of control over forces once feared. Around its glow, humans found safety to rest, to dream, and to plan for the days ahead. And then there was culture. Fire brought people together. Flames drew groups into circles where shadows danced across faces and stories came to life. Language may have grown by firelight as people exchanged knowledge, myths, and humor in the security of its glow. Songs may have been sung first around embers, laughter echoing in the night. Fire was the stage for humanity's first theatres, the lamp of the earlier storytellers, the heart of every gathering. It transformed not just what humans ate, but who humans were. It is easy to underestimate how much fire altered the rhythm of life. Before fire, nightfall meant darkness and stillness. After fire, night became a time of activity, of sharing, of community. The day no longer ended with the sun. It extended into the hours of flame and ember. This extra time may have allowed bonds to grow stronger, ideas to spread further, and traditions to root themselves deeply. Of course, fire was not free. It demanded skill to maintain. Sparks needed tending, fuel needed gathering, and flames needed guarding. To let a fire die in the wrong season could mean death. This responsibility gave rise to rituals and taboos, practices that made sure fire was respected. In many cultures, firekeepers were honoured, seen as stewards of the flame that sustained life. Eventually, fire spread beyond the hearth. It hardened clay into pottery, forged tools from metal, and cleared fields for agriculture. Each step forward in civilization bore the mark of fire's transformative power. The simple act of cooking grew into metallurgy, industry, and invention. From blacksmiths hammering at anvils to glassmakers shaping molten sand, fire became both a literal and symbolic tool of progress. What began as sparks from lightning or volcanic eruptions became a companion carried across continents. Fire was transported in bundles of smouldering sticks, nurtured with dried leaves and bark, and passed carefully from one settlement to another. In this way, humanity carried its energy revolution with it, ensuring that wherever people went, they could light up the darkness. There is something almost poetic in how fire mirrored humanity itself. Wild and dangerous when uncontrolled, it became a partner when tended with care. It could consume or create depending on how it was handled. In many myths, fire was a gift from the gods, a stolen treasure that set humanity apart. Prometheus, in Greek legend, brought fire down from Olympus, an act of defiance that marked the beginning of human advancement. The myths capture a truth. Fire was not just another tool. It was the tool that changed everything. Even today, though we light our homes with electricity and cook on stoves that glow without flame, the presence of fire still stirs something ancient. Campfires continue to draw people into circles, hypnotizing with their shifting colors. Candles burn at celebrations, their flames marking moments of reflection and ritual. Fire remains in our culture as more than utility. It is a symbol of life, warmth, and connection. The first fire tended by human hands was more than warmth against the cold. It was a promise. It promised that life could reach further, that food could nourish more deeply, that nights could be filled with story and song. It promised that survival could give way to thriving. Fire was humanity's first true partnership with energy, a revolution not measured in machines or numbers, but in the glow of embers on ancient nights. The history of agriculture is the history of humanity learning how to bottle sunlight. Before farming, people lived as hunters and gatherers, relying on whatever nature happened to provide. Wild fruit, roots, and animals offered bursts of calories, but they were unpredictable. Energy came and went like passing weather. Then came a revolution so quiet yet so transformative that it reshaped the course of history: the deliberate cultivation of crops. Agriculture was humanity's first large-scale energy storage system, a way of capturing sunlight and keeping it in reserve for when it was needed. At its heart, farming is a simple exchange. Plants, as always, do the work of photosynthesis, converting solar energy into sugars and starches. But instead of leaving this process to chance, humans began to guide it. They cleared land, planted seeds, and protected crops from pests. By doing so, they created fields that acted like solar panels, steadily banking energy in the form of grain, fruits, and vegetables. What had once been scattered and uncertain became concentrated and reliable. The calories stored in a sack of wheat or a jar of rice were nothing less than sunlight made edible. This shift carried enormous consequences. For the first time, people could accumulate surplus energy. A hunter's catch or a basket of foraged berries might feed a group for a day or two, but a harvested field of barley could sustain a community for months. Surplus was the secret ingredient that allowed civilization to rise. When food supplies stretched beyond immediate need, not everyone had to spend their time searching for the next meal. Some could become builders, artisans, or thinkers. Priests, rulers, and scribes appeared, all supported by the calories grown and stored by farmers. The energy freed by agriculture was not just physical but cultural. It paid for pyramids, temples, cities, and stories. Grain, in particular, became the cornerstone of this system. Unlike perishable fruits or vegetables, grains could be dried, stored, and transported over long distances. They were calorie-dense, durable, and divisible, qualities that made them more than just food. Grain became a kind of currency in itself. Farmers could pay taxes in wheat, temples could accept offerings in barley, and armies could march on rations of rice. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets record careful accounts of grain distributed as wages. In Egypt, the wealth of pharaohs was measured in the granaries that lined the Nile. In China, dynasties rose on the strength of rice harvests. These grains were not just sustenance, but symbols of wealth, power, and stability. Calories, after all, are the most basic unit of energy for life. A person needs only a few thousand each day to survive, but when multiplied across a population, those calories add up to staggering amounts. Agriculture allowed communities to think in terms of millions of calories stored in granaries, a kind of energy bank that could be tapped in lean times. This security created resilience, but it also demanded careful management. Granaries needed guards against thieves and pests, fields needed irrigation and labor, and rulers needed systems to track it all. In this way, energy storage directly gave rise to bureaucracy, law, and governance. The beauty of farming as energy management lies in its scalability. A small family could tend a patch of land for themselves, while vast civilizations could expand fields into enormous estates, feeding entire cities. Each expansion increased the flow of solar energy into human societies, enabling greater complexity. The invention of irrigation, plows, and crop rotation were not just agricultural techniques, but energy multipliers, squeezing more calories out of the same patch of earth. Every improvement was another way of catching and bottling sunlight. But this abundance also reshaped human lives in unexpected ways. Diets narrowed as people relied more heavily on staple crops. Wheat, rice, and maize delivered reliable calories, but they lacked the diversity of wild diets. Health sometimes declined as people became more dependent on a few foods. Labor demands also increased. Farming required long hours in fields. back-breaking work that tied people to the land. In this sense, agriculture was both liberation and constraint. It freed humanity from uncertainty, but bound it to cycles of planting and harvest. Yet despite the challenges, agriculture endured because its benefits were profound. Surplus food made it possible to sustain growing populations, and growing populations gave rise to culture, technology, and innovation. Energy stored in grain was transformed into cathedrals, voyages, and inventions. Each loaf of bread or bowl of rice was, in its way, a fuel for human progress. The cultural significance of farming cannot be overstated. Festivals marking planting and harvest became cornerstones of tradition. Myths of dying and resurrecting gods often mirrored the cycles of crops, reflecting humanity's awareness of dependence on the stored energy of the earth. Rituals, offerings, and celebrations revolved around the success of the harvest. The simple act of growing food was elevated into a sacred exchange with the forces of nature. Even today, echoes of this ancient energy system remain. Modern economies may run on electricity and oil, but the foundation is still agriculture. Supermarkets brimming with food are the descendants of ancient granaries, and global trade routes mirror the old exchanges of barley and wheat. Calories remain the unspoken wealth beneath all wealth. Without the steady capture of sunlight in fields, no amount of money or machinery could sustain civilization. There is a quiet poetry in realizing that the meals we eat each day are not just nourishment, but the latest chapter in humanity's long project of storing sunlight. The bread on a table, the rice in a bowl, the corn in a tortilla are all grains of light, harvested, saved, and shared. They are tokens of energy, grown from earth and sky, passed down through centuries of farming innovation. Agriculture was not just a change in lifestyle. It was the creation of a system that turned fleeting sunlight into lasting stability. It allowed energy to be stored, measured, exchanged, and invested. It was the first large-scale economy of life, one that continues to sustain billions of people today. In learning to farm, humanity learned to manage energy not only for survival, but for civilization itself. The fields became vaults, the granaries became banks, and grain became both food and currency, shaping the destiny of our species in ways that still echo through every meal we share. Beneath our feet lies a hidden treasury, a storehouse of energy so vast and so ancient that it predates humanity by hundreds of millions of years. Coal, oil, and natural gas are more than black rocks, slick liquids, or invisible vapors. They are time capsules of sunlight, captured by ancient plants and plankton, compressed by geological forces, and buried deep within the earth. When humans learned to dig, drill, and ignite these fossil fuels, they unlocked a fortune of energy that reshaped the world. It was like discovering a vault of forgotten wealth and spending it all at once. To understand fossil fuels, imagine forests of towering ferns and swamps buzzing with life 300 million years ago. Plants absorbed sunlight, just as they do today, storing energy in their tissues. When these plants died, many were buried under layers of mud and sediment instead of fully decomposing. Over millions of years, pressure and heat transformed them into coal. Later, in ancient seas, tiny plankton and algae met a similar fate, settling onto the seafloor and becoming the source of oil and gas. Each lump of coal, each droplet of crude oil, each puff of natural gas is fossilized sunlight, the stored energy of ecosystems long vanished, preserved in the Earth's crust. For most of human history, this treasure lay untouched. People relied on wood for warmth and muscle power for labor. Wind and water turned a few mills, but energy remained limited, tied to the rhythms of nature. Then came the Industrial Revolution, when coal emerged as the fuel that would ignite transformation. Steam engines powered by coal drove trains across continents, pumped water from mines, and spun the wheels of factories. What once took weeks of human or animal labor could be achieved in hours. Coal was like finding an energy jackpot, a condensed store of power ready to be spent at industrial scale. Oil soon followed, bringing with it even greater flexibility. Liquid and portable, oil could be refined into fuels that powered ships, automobiles, and eventually airplanes. It lubricated machinery, lit lamps, and later fueled the electricity that brightened entire cities. Natural gas, cleaner burning and efficient, entered the picture as well, heating homes and driving turbines. Together, coal, oil, and gas became the backbone of modern civilization, fueling an explosion of industry, technology, and population. The sheer abundance of fossil fuels created a sense of limitless possibility. Factories could run day and night. Crops could be grown at unprecedented scales, with fertilizers derived from fossil energy. Goods could be transported across oceans, connecting once isolated corners of the world. Medicine, communication, and science advanced at lightning speed, powered by the concentrated energy of ancient sunlight. The wealth of the past became the foundation of the future. Yet, as with all fortunes, there was a cost. Fossil fuels are not like renewable sunlight or wind. They are finite deposits. Every ton of coal, every barrel of oil, every cubic meter of gas represents a withdrawal from a savings account that took millions of years to accumulate. Humanity has spent these reserves in just a few short centuries. It is as though we discovered an inheritance from the deep past and, rather than spending it carefully, we threw a worldwide party. The environmental costs have proven even greater. When fossil fuels burn, they release carbon dioxide, the same carbon once absorbed by ancient plants. For ages, that carbon lay safely stored underground, out of circulation. By releasing it back into the atmosphere, humans have shifted the planet's balance. The result is rising global temperatures, shifting climates, melting ice, and increasingly unstable weather. Fossil fuels may have powered progress, but they also saddled humanity with an energy debt, a debt now being repaid in storms, droughts, and rising seas. The irony is that the very qualities that made fossil fuels so appealing, their density, portability, and reliability, also make them dangerous when used without restraint. They are powerful precisely because they are concentrated sunlight, stored and compressed by geological time. Burning them is like cashing in sunlight that was meant to last across millennia. Each flick of a light switch, each turn of a car key, is a tiny act of spending from this ancient vault. And collectively, those acts add up to a massive outflow. But it would be unfair to view fossil fuels only as villains. They lifted billions out of poverty, extended lifespans, and made possible many of the comforts of modern life. The warmth of heated homes, the medicine transported by planes, the lights glowing in hospitals, all of these are gifts of fossil energy. The problem lies not in their use, but in the unchecked scale of it, and in the failure to recognize their true costs until it was nearly too late. Thinking of fossil fuels as buried sunlight helps put things into perspective. When you hold a piece of coal, you're holding the compressed remains of a swamp that flourished before even the dinosaurs. When oil burns in an engine, it is releasing energy captured by plankton drifting in ancient seas. Each flame, each spark, each whirring motor is a resurrection of past life, summoned briefly into the present. It is both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a reminder that the past is not gone but still powers the present. Now humanity stands at a crossroads. The reserves of fossil fuels are not infinite, and their side effects grow harder to ignore. The atmosphere, once a silent background to life, now bears the imprint of every barrel of oil and ton of coal consumed. The energy debt compounds, and repayment comes not in money but in shifting ecosystems. The question is no longer whether fossil fuels can sustain us, but whether we can transition to new sources before the cost overwhelms the benefits. It is a humbling realization that the great engine of modern civilization was fueled by the quiet work of plants and plankton millions of years ago. They captured sunlight, died, and were buried, and in their remnants lay the key to industrial power. Humanity inherited their savings and spent them at dazzling speed. The story of fossil fuels is not just about progress in industry, but about the choices we make with energy and the debts those choices create. Coal, oil, and gas remain with us, still burning in power stations, still coursing through engines, still heating homes. But their story is shifting from triumph to cautionary tale. They remind us that energy, no matter how abundant it seems, is never free. It always carries a cost, whether in effort, in scarcity, or in the health of the world itself. The challenge before us is how to honor the wealth of ancient sunlight without exhausting the balance sheet of the future. Electricity is so woven into modern life that it is easy to forget how strange and remarkable it really is. Flick a switch, and a room is flooded with light. Plug in a machine, and it whirs to life. Send a message across the globe, and it travels instantly, carried on invisible currents. Of all the forms of energy, electricity has become the most flexible, the most obedient, and the most universal. It is the currency we can summon on demand, shaped into light, heat, motion, or information with effortless ease. The story of electricity began not with power plants or glowing bulbs, but with curiosity. Ancient observers noticed sparks from rubbed amber or lightning in the sky, but these phenomena seemed more like magic than science. For centuries, electricity was a curiosity at best, a parlor trick at worst. Only in the 18th and 19th centuries did experimenters begin to uncover its secrets, learning how to generate, store, and control it. Once tamed, electricity transformed from spectacle to necessity, moving from laboratory demonstrations to the beating heart of civilization. The light bulb became the first great ambassador of this new energy. With a twist of wire and a filament glowing inside glass, night was banished at the command of a switch. No longer bound by the rhythms of sun and candle, people extended their waking hours into the night with clean, reliable light. Streets became safer, factories ran longer, and homes glowed with steady brightness. The light bulb was more than convenience. It was a symbol of progress, the visible glow of energy made domesticated and immediate. But electricity's real genius lies in its versatility. With the same current that illuminates a bulb, you can also turn a motor. Motors are perhaps the quiet workhorses of modernity, converting electrical energy into motion. They pump water, spin fans, run trains, and power assembly lines. Unlike steam engines, which required heat and vast amounts of fuel, electric motors delivered motion instantly and precisely. A small motor in a sewing machine or a massive one in a factory all run on the same invisible current. Electricity was not just a new form of energy, it was a new way of doing everything. Communication, too, was revolutionized. The telegraph carried dots and dashes across continents, shrinking vast distances into mere moments. The telephone turned electrical signals into human voices, binding cities, families, and nations together. Later, radio waves carried sound and music through the air, all powered by electrical currents flickering through circuits. What once took weeks of travel could now be achieved with the crackle of a line or the spin of a dial. Electricity made the world smaller, faster, and more connected. What made this possible was not just individual inventions, but the creation of the grid. Imagine a vast marketplace where energy is constantly traded, bought, and sold. But instead of coins, it is electrons moving down wires. Power plants act as suppliers, generating electricity from coal, oil, gas, water, wind, or the sun. Homes, businesses, and industries are consumers, drawing what they need. Between them lies the grid, an intricate network of wires, transformers, and substations that ensures the flow is balanced at every moment. The grid is one of humanity's most complex creations, a system so finely tuned that even slight imbalances can ripple through it. Yet for the user, it feels effortless. A flip of a switch, a push of a button, and the current is there, as though conjured from nowhere. Electricity's flexibility comes from its ability to be converted easily into other forms. Heat coils glow in ovens and toasters. Screens flicker with images. Computers calculate at unimaginable speeds. Magnetic fields spin turbines or drive speakers. Unlike other fuels, which are tied to specific uses, electricity is a universal currency that can be shaped to fit almost any need. It is not bound to one form of work, but can be translated endlessly. That adaptability explains why electricity became the lifeblood of modern civilization. Of course, electricity is not stored directly on a large scale, but generated as needed. This makes the grid a constantly moving economy, where supply must exactly meet demand. Too much electricity flooding the wires can cause blackouts. Too little, and the system falters. Engineers balance this dance every second of every day, adjusting power stations, rerouting flows, and smoothing peaks of demand. When millions of people switch on their kettles in the morning or televisions in the evening, the grid responds instantly, sending currents racing down copper lines to meet the call. It is a miracle of coordination, invisible yet indispensable. The spread of electricity also reshaped human behavior. Nights lengthened as people read, worked, and socialized by electric light. Factories reorganized around assembly lines powered by motors rather than steam engines. Cities grew vertically with elevators and subways, both reliant on electrical systems. Even the rhythms of daily life changed, governed less by sun and season, and more by the steady hum of power plants. Electricity gave humanity mastery over time itself, blurring the boundaries between day and night, work and rest. Yet for all its power, electricity is not something that can be seen directly. The wires look inert, the sockets ordinary, the bulbs dark until the current flows. It is the ultimate invisible servant, carrying out countless tasks without ever being noticed. People may marvel at a glowing skyline or the flicker of neon, but the true wonder lies in the unseen rivers of electrons that keep the modern world alive. It is almost comical to think that this entire revolution depends on particles smaller than atoms, moving through metal at the push of a switch. Billions upon billions of electrons drift in orderly fashion, and in doing so they carry our voices, spin our wheels, and light our nights. Electricity is proof that the smallest things can yield the greatest transformations. The rise of electricity was not inevitable. It required vision, experimentation, and vast infrastructure. But once adopted, it became indispensable. Today, nearly every device, every comfort, every connection we enjoy rests upon this flexible current. It has become the most fluid and versatile energy currency ever devised, capable of being spent in countless ways. To walk through a modern city at night with its glowing towers and humming streets is to see electricity made visible. It is a reminder that behind every spark of light, every turning motor, every whispered call across oceans lies the same simple current, flowing tirelessly through wires. Electricity is energy on demand, the universal currency that has come to define the modern age, a quiet yet powerful force humming through the veins of civilization. When most people think of wealth, they imagine coins, paper bills, or digital numbers glowing on a screen. Yet beneath every economy of money lies another, older economy that makes all others possible, the economy of energy. Calories, watts, and joules are the real coins of existence. Money may measure them, exchange them, or disguise them, but it cannot replace them. A vault full of gold cannot light a single lamp, move a single wheel, or feed a single mouth without energy behind it. In the end, true wealth is always rooted in energy. The parallel between money and energy is striking. Consider calories. They are the currency of the body, the small units that keep muscles moving and hearts beating. Spend too many without replenishing them, and you feel the pinch of hunger. Save them in excess, and they are stored away as fat reserves for leaner times. Coins in a pocket behave the same way. Too much spending leaves you empty-handed, while too much saving creates a different kind of burden. Energy in the body and money in the hand follow the same fundamental principle. Balance is everything. Watts and wealth share similar rhythms. A watt is simply a rate of doing work, a measurement of how quickly energy is spent. Wealth, in economic terms, often reflects the same concept, the ability to make things happen. A rich society is one that can build bridges, send ships across oceans, or power factories humming with production. But each of these feats requires energy. You cannot construct a cathedral with coins alone. You need the muscles of workers, the calories in their food, and the physical energy of wood, stone, and tools. You cannot run a factory with currency unless that money is exchanged for fuel to drive the machines. In this way, money is a proxy, a symbol that only has meaning when tied to energy. Throughout history, this connection has been obvious, even if rarely stated. Ancient economies measured wealth in grain, livestock, or land, all direct sources of energy. A sack of barley was both food and money, calories that could sustain labourers or be traded for other goods. Land was valued not as a patch of soil, but as a solar collector, capable of producing crops year after year. Livestock were walking batteries, storing calories in their bodies and providing muscle power to plough fields or pull carts. Even when coins were minted from gold or silver, their worth often reflected the labour, the energy they could command. A coin bought bread, and bread was sunlight transformed into sustenance. As economies grew more abstract, the link became less visible, but no less real. Today, a paycheck is measured in numbers, but those numbers translate directly into energy use. A salary pays for electricity to power lights, fuel to move cars, and food to fill cupboards. Governments calculate GDP in financial terms, but what they are really tracking is the rate at which societies convert energy into goods, services, and infrastructure. Without energy, money is only decoration. The Industrial Revolution made this relationship impossible to ignore. Factories ran on coal, ships sailed on steam, and cities glowed with gas lamps. The wealth of nations was measured in tons of coal mined and barrels of oil drilled, because these directly determined how much production and power a society could unleash. A nation with abundant energy reserves was wealthy, no matter what its coinage looked like. Even wars were fought not only for territory, but for the energy resources beneath it. Energy dictated wealth, and wealth pursued energy. This parallel economy also explains why energy efficiency is so valuable. To a household, reducing energy waste is like cutting unnecessary expenses. To a business, efficiency increases profit by delivering more work for less cost. And to a nation, using energy wisely stretches its wealth further. The pursuit of efficiency in engines, factories, and homes mirrors the pursuit of financial prudence in banks and budgets. Both are strategies for making limited resources achieve the greatest possible impact. It is tempting to imagine that money alone creates wealth, but history shows otherwise. A paper bill has no power on its own. Its worth lies in the energy it represents. A society flush with currency but without food, fuel, or electricity would quickly collapse. Conversely, a society with abundant energy sources, even with little formal currency, can thrive. Fields of grain, flowing rivers, or sunlit valleys provide more wealth than stacks of bills ever could. Energy is wealth in its most elemental form, because it is the capacity to make change happen. This perspective also helps explain modern anxieties. The stability of financial markets often hinges on the price of oil, gas, or electricity. When energy becomes scarce or expensive, the flow of money falters, because money is ultimately tied to energy's availability. Even digital economies, seemingly weightless and detached from physical limits, still rely on vast amounts of energy to power servers, networks, and devices. Every email, every streamed song, every cryptocurrency mined is underwritten by electricity humming through circuits. Digital wealth, too, rests upon real watts. There is a certain irony in how humans treat money and energy differently. We track every cent with precision, agonize over budgets, and tally accounts carefully. Yet energy often slips past unnoticed. Light switches are flipped without thought. Food is wasted without a second glance. Engines idle with little concern. If energy is the true wealth, then humans are sometimes careless bankers, forgetting the value of what is being spent. And yet the poetry of this connection is undeniable. Every calorie you consume is sunlight filtered through plants, transformed into bread or fruit. Every watt that powers a lamp is a ripple of electrons, set in motion by turbines or solar panels. Behind the abstraction of money lies the real currency of the cosmos, moving ceaselessly through bodies, cities, and stars. To think of wealth in terms of energy is to strip away the illusion and see the world as it is. A network of exchanges where value is measured in motion, heat, and light. Perhaps the most humbling truth is this: no matter how large the fortune, no one can buy a single extra joule of energy that does not exist. Money can rearrange who has access to energy, but it cannot summon new energy into being. The ultimate constraint on wealth is not the size of a bank account, but the availability of energy to be harnessed. This is why civilizations have risen and fallen with their access to fertile land, forests, coal or oil. Money may shift hands, but energy writes the rules. In the end, money is a symbol, a tool for managing exchanges between people. Energy is reality, the force that keeps those people alive and makes their exchanges possible. To recognize this is not to diminish the importance of money, but to understand its foundation. True wealth is not printed, minted, or stored in digital ledgers. True wealth is sunlight caught in grain, fuel mined from the earth, rivers turned into power, and the calories that keep hearts beating. Coins and notes are shadows of this deeper truth, reflections of the energy that sustains life itself. When viewed in this way, the economy of money and the economy of energy are not separate but entwined. One measures, the other powers. One symbolizes, the other enacts. And while fortunes may rise and fall in markets, the greater truth remains steady. Wealth begins and ends with energy, the only currency the universe truly honors. When humanity first began burning coal and oil, it was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure chest and spending lavishly without much thought of the bill to come. Those fossil riches seemed endless, but in truth, they were ancient savings accounts built up over millions of years. Renewable energy, by contrast, is not about draining buried reserves, but about living on nature's regular income. It is less about striking gold and more about learning to budget with the steady paycheck the earth and sky provide. In this sense, renewables are humanity's way of borrowing from nature's wallet, with the promise that the account will never run dry so long as we stay within the limits. Consider solar power. Every second, the sun showers Earth with more energy than humanity uses in an entire year. It is a wealth so vast it feels almost careless, photons tumbling freely across oceans, forests, and deserts. Solar panels are, at their simplest, quiet collectors of this daily allowance. They catch a portion of the sun's rays and transform them into electricity, clean and immediate. What once required burning ancient forests can now be achieved by capturing a sliver of today's sunlight. In a way, solar energy is like learning to live directly on the cosmic paycheck, instead of raiding the deep savings accounts of fossil fuels. Wind, too, is solar energy in disguise. It begins with sunlight unevenly heating the earth, creating pressure differences that set air in motion. For countless generations, humans harnessed this invisible force with sails, letting the wind carry them across seas. Later, they built windmills, grinding grain or pumping water with blades that turned patiently under the sky. Today's turbines are simply grander versions of these old machines. Their enormous blades sweeping circles across the landscape, turning gusts into gigawatts. Each spin is a reminder that the atmosphere itself is alive with energy, freely available to anyone clever enough to catch it. Hydropower tells a similar story of patience and balance. Rain falls, rivers flow, and water gathers in vast reservoirs. The potential energy of that water, suspended behind a dam, can be released in a controlled torrent, spinning turbines and producing electricity. Unlike fossil fuels, hydropower does not consume its source. The water continues on its journey, available again after its fall. For centuries, water wheels turned mills, and now massive dams hum with power, providing electricity to millions. It is one of the oldest forms of renewable energy, and one of the most elegant. The simple gravity of water transformed into light and warmth. Then there is geothermal energy, the Earth's own quiet furnace. Beneath the crust lies a reservoir of heat left from the planet's formation and continuously renewed by radioactive decay in the core. In volcanic regions, hot water and steam bubble close to the surface, waiting to be tapped. Wells and turbines can transform that subterranean heat into electricity or warmth for homes. It is as though the Earth itself were lending us some of its body heat, a reminder that our planet is not a cold stone but a living, breathing system with energy of its own. Renewable energy is often described as clean and sustainable, but it is also deeply philosophical. It asks humanity to shift perspective from extraction to balance. Fossil fuels taught us to dig and burn, to consume without much thought for tomorrow. Renewables ask us instead to align ourselves with the rhythms of nature, to take only what is offered and to respect the cycles that provide it. It is a gentler relationship, one where energy is borrowed rather than stolen, and where the account is never truly depleted. This shift also comes with a kind of cosmic humour. Unlike fossil fuels, which can run dry, renewables come with what might be called overdraft protection from the universe. The sun will rise again tomorrow. The wind will keep sweeping the skies. Rivers will continue their descent to the sea, and the Earth's core will keep glowing for billions of years. Humanity cannot bankrupt these sources in the same way it has exhausted coal seams or oil fields. They are part of the planet's steady salary, deposited daily, weekly, and seasonally into the account of existence. The trick lies in learning to use them wisely, matching our consumption to the flow. That balance, however, is not always simple. The sun sets each night, winds can fall still, rivers shift with droughts, and geothermal heat is not equally available everywhere. Renewable energy requires not only capture but also clever storage, finding ways to save today's sunlight for use at midnight or tomorrow's wind for a still afternoon. Batteries, pumped reservoirs, and smart grids are the financial planners of this new energy economy, smoothing out the ups and downs of nature's income. Just as a household saves surplus earnings to cover lean times, humanity must learn to store and share renewable wealth. Culturally, the turn to renewables is also a return to older wisdom. Long before coal mines and oil wells, humans were already renewable creatures. They sailed by the wind, warmed themselves by the sun, and ground grain with flowing water. The shift now is not entirely new, but it is larger in scale and guided by science. It is a blending of ancient practices with modern technology, a reminder that the answers we need have often been with us all along. The beauty of renewables lies not only in their practicality but in their symbolism. To stand beneath a wind turbine is to feel the sky itself moving a machine. To sit in a house powered by solar panels is to know that the star overhead has become your silent partner. To walk along a river beside a dam is to witness gravity's pull, turned into the glow of a lamp. To rest in a geothermal spa is to feel the pulse of the planet itself warming your skin. These are not distant or abstract sources. They are immediate, intimate, and deeply connected to the world we inhabit. Perhaps the most calming thought is that renewable energy ties humanity's future back into the grand cycles of Earth. It suggests a way of living not as a reckless spender of ancient fortunes, but as a participant in nature's ongoing rhythms. Sunlight, wind, water, and heat are the incomes we can count on, the steady flows that promise abundance if treated with care. They remind us that wealth is not always something to be hoarded or extracted, but something to be shared, renewed, and balanced. To think of renewable energy is to think of a partnership, not conquest, but cooperation. It is the art of aligning our needs with the endless currents that already flow through the world. And while humanity has often treated energy as a resource to exploit, renewables invite us to see it as a gift to borrow, use and return gracefully. In this sense, they are not just technologies but philosophies, reminders that the truest wealth is found not in depletion, but in harmony with the planet that sustains us. Every moment of your life, whether you're running a marathon or lying perfectly still, your body is balancing an energy budget. Each breath, each heartbeat, each flicker of thought requires fuel. The food you eat and the air you breathe are continuously transformed into energy, distributed through intricate pathways, and spent on everything from moving muscles to repairing cells. Metabolism is the silent accountant keeping track of it all, ensuring that you neither overspend nor run out of the essential currency that keeps you alive. At its core, metabolism is simply the set of processes that turn fuel into usable energy. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are broken down into molecules small enough for your cells to absorb. Inside those cells, the magic happens. Glucose is converted into ATP, that tiny coin of energy that powers everything from blinking an eye to dreaming at night. Every bite of bread or sip of milk is broken down, piece by piece, into these cellular coins, which are then spent in astonishing numbers every second. Even sitting quietly, your body uses energy to maintain temperature, repair microscopic damage, and keep your organs humming along. The quiet hum of metabolism never stops. What surprises many people is just how much energy the body spends at rest. Even if you did nothing but lie still all day, your body would still consume thousands of calories. This baseline, called your resting metabolic rate, pays for the essentials: pumping blood, breathing, digesting, balancing ions across membranes and repairing tissues. You're like a city that never sleeps, with lights glowing in the background, water running through pipes, and maintenance crews working quietly behind the scenes. Movement and exercise add to this, of course, but the majority of your energy is spent on simply keeping the body alive and balanced. Among all the organs demanding their share, the brain stands out as particularly greedy. Despite making up only a small fraction of body weight, it consumes around 1/5 of the body's total energy at rest. That means every thought, memory, and flicker of imagination is an expensive luxury, metabolically speaking. The brain is not like a muscle that works only when called upon. It is always active, processing sensory input, maintaining awareness, and preparing for action. Even in sleep, it hums with activity, replaying memories, consolidating knowledge, and maintaining its complex circuits. The price of consciousness, it seems, is a constant appetite for energy. The reason for this high demand lies in how neurons work. Each signal sent across a neural circuit depends on the movement of charged ions across membranes. These tiny shifts require pumps that consume ATP in staggering numbers. Multiply this by billions of neurons firing in intricate patterns, and the brain becomes an energy-hungry machine, devouring glucose and oxygen like no other organ. That foggy feeling when you skip a meal is not just mood. It is the brain demanding its payment in fuel, reminding you that even kings of thought are beholden to biology. Muscles, too, are major spenders, though their use fluctuates more dramatically. A muscle at rest requires little, but once activated, its appetite for ATP skyrockets. Sprinting, lifting, or even holding a posture drains cellular wallets quickly, which is why fatigue sets in when energy cannot be replenished fast enough. Endurance training teaches muscles to use fuel more efficiently, but no matter how trained, the rule remains. Movement costs energy, and the harder you move, the higher the price. Energy in the body is not only about how much you spend, but how well you manage it. That is where sleep enters the picture. Far from being wasted time, sleep is one of the body's cleverest budgeting strategies. During the day, energy is spent freely, with the brain in overdrive and the body in constant activity. At night, systems slow down, demand eases, and resources are redirected toward repair and recovery. Proteins are rebuilt, memories are consolidated, and the immune system rallies. Sleep is like a nightly audit, balancing the books and preparing the body for another day of spending. Without sleep, the system falters. The brain grows less efficient, decision-making blurs, and the immune system weakens. It is as though the accountant stopped working and debts began to pile up. The fatigue that comes with sleeplessness is not just a lack of rest, but the result of poor budgeting. You're living on credit, borrowing from reserves without repaying them fully. Eventually, like any system running on deficit, the body demands repayment in the form of deep, unavoidable sleep. What makes the body's energy economy fascinating is how flexible it can be. In times of abundance, excess energy is stored as fat, a kind of savings account for the future. In times of scarcity, the body draws on those reserves, breaking them down to keep essential systems running. This ability allowed our ancestors to survive feast and famine, adapting to cycles of plenty and lean. Today, in a world of constant food availability, it sometimes leads to overfull accounts, stored energy that accumulates more quickly than it is spent. Still, the principle remains: store when you can, spend when you must. Even emotions and behaviors are influenced by energy management. Hunger makes us irritable not only because we crave food, but because our brains are signaling energy debt. Pleasure often accompanies eating, an evolutionary nudge to ensure we replenish our reserves. Lethargy after a heavy meal is not laziness, but the body shifting energy toward digestion. Everything from our moods to our choices is tied in subtle ways to the flow of calories through our systems. It is humbling to think of yourself as a collection of energy budgets in constant negotiation. The brain demands its cut, muscles ask for more when active, and organs quietly take their share. Sleep reconciles the accounts, ensuring the system remains solvent. What feels like willpower, thought, or personality is, at the most basic level, a reflection of how energy is distributed within the body. Perhaps the most poetic truth is this: the energy flowing through you right now was once sunlight. Plants captured it, storing it in sugars and grains. You consumed it, transformed it, and now spend it as thoughts, movements, and dreams. Your body is both spender and investor, balancing a budget that began with the star in the sky. Every step you take, every word you speak, every night you rest is part of this ceaseless economy. To live is to manage energy. To thrive is to spend it wisely, honoring the hidden accountants of metabolism, the tireless hunger of the brain, and the restorative audits of sleep. You're not just a body or a mind, but a living marketplace, a flowing economy of sunlight transformed, spent, and renewed. And in the end, every heartbeat is both a withdrawal and a reminder that the account is still open, still flowing, still rich with the energy of life. Energy is not just a concept of physics or biology. It flows through our cultures, our rituals, and even the words we choose every day. Language is littered with metaphors drawn from energy, so much so that we barely notice them. We speak of people as powerful or powerless, of situations as draining or energizing, of ideas sparking, igniting, or burning out. We describe leaders as having strength, friends as giving us a boost, and adversities as weighing us down. Without thinking, we borrow the vocabulary of energy to describe our lives, because in some way it feels closest to truth. The word currency itself is a perfect example. In finance, currency is money that circulates, but its root is the idea of flow, of something moving steadily like a current in water or electricity. To call energy a currency is not only poetic, but deeply accurate, since both money and energy move through systems exchanged and transformed, never static for long. Similarly, the word power slips easily between meanings. It can describe the strength of a machine, the influence of a person, or the wattage of a bulb. Strength, force, vitality. These are all ways of recognizing that at the heart of human experience lies the need for energy to act, to persist, to change the world around us. Cultures have always understood this, long before the scientific language of joules and calories existed. Ancient myths are filled with gods of the sun, fire, wind, and water, embodiments of natural forces that sustained or threatened human survival. Rituals often centered on maintaining balance with these energies, whether through offerings to ensure a good harvest or dances to cool down rain. Fire in particular was sacred in countless traditions. To keep a flame burning was to keep life itself alive. Even today, candles at ceremonies or eternal flames at memorials carry the same symbolism. Energy as a sign of continuity, presence, and spirit. Stories, too, are woven with the imagery of energy. Heroes draw strength for impossible tasks, villains are often consumed by dark or destructive power, and transformations are marked by bursts of light or fire. In folklore, energy is rarely abstract. It is visceral, lightning bolts hurled by gods, sacred flames that cannot be extinguished, life forces that flow through the body. These images resonate because they tap into something universal, the recognition that without energy, nothing moves, nothing grows, nothing continues. Even in everyday speech, energy metaphors shape how we understand ourselves and others. When we say someone is full of life, or radiates positivity, we are speaking as though they are little suns, shining energy outward. When someone drains us, we imagine them siphoning our reserves. A group may feel electric, buzzing with shared excitement, while another setting feels heavy, dull, or lifeless. These expressions are not random. They reflect an instinctive awareness of energy as the medium of connection between people. To have good vibes is to emit an invisible frequency that others can sense, a resonance that uplifts and harmonizes. In spiritual traditions, this sense of energy often takes the form of life force concepts. The Chinese speak of ki, the Indians of prana, the Polynesians of mana. Though the words differ, the idea is the same. There is a subtle energy that animates the body, flows through the world, and connects all living things. Practices like meditation, yoga, tai chi, or prayer are not merely exercises of the mind, but ways of aligning with this energy, conserving it, or channeling it wisely. While science may describe these practices in terms of breathing, circulation, or focus, the metaphor of energy persists because it feels true to human experience. Energy metaphors also shape how we view time and effort. We talk about investing energy into relationships or spending it on tasks, as though our daily lives are ledgers that must be balanced. Burnout is the perfect metaphor, conjuring the image of a candle that has exhausted its wax. Inspiration is described as a spark, small but capable of igniting great change. Motivation fuels us, while boredom leaves us running on empty. In these expressions, the physics of energy has quietly become the psychology of life. Even humour makes use of these metaphors. Someone who cannot wake up in the morning may joke about needing to recharge like a phone. A lively child is a ball of energy, while a tired adult insists they are out of batteries. The comparisons feel natural because both bodies and machines rely on steady inputs of fuel. Whether in jest or sincerity, these expressions remind us of the deep connection between energy and vitality. Rituals and celebrations across the world echo this theme. Festivals of light, from Diwali to Hanukkah to Christmas, celebrate not just the triumph of brightness over darkness, but the persistence of energy through adversity. The lighting of candles, lanterns, or fires is a shared gesture across cultures, symbolizing hope, renewal, and the flow of life. In dances and ceremonies, the physical outpouring of energy becomes a communal act, a way of aligning many bodies into a single rhythm. The joy of such moments comes not only from the activity itself, but from the sense of shared energy moving through the group. Perhaps the most modern extension of this cultural fascination is the way we talk about electricity in human terms. A performer lights up the stage. A relationship has chemistry. A conversation sparks. Cities at night are described as vibrant or pulsating, their glowing grids resembling the synapses of a giant brain. Even our digital lives are drenched in energy language, connections, signals, wireless waves carrying thoughts, and images like invisible currents. The metaphors are so natural that we hardly pause to notice them. Why does energy hold such sway over language and culture? Perhaps because it is the one thing that is both invisible and undeniable. You cannot see energy itself, but you see its effects everywhere. In the flicker of a flame, the crash of waves, the laughter of friends, or the exhaustion after effort. Energy is what makes existence dynamic rather than static. To live is to be in motion, and to be in motion is to be filled with energy. It is no wonder we reach for it as the model for so much of what we feel and believe. In the end, energy in culture is more than metaphor. It is a mirror of how people perceive the world and themselves, whether in myths of gods hurling lightning, in candles glowing at vigils, in words about sparks and vibes, or in the language of power and strength. Energy remains the quiet thread binding human experience. It is the force that fuels not just our bodies and machines, but our imaginations, our rituals, and our stories. To say someone has good vibes may sound casual, but it is in fact a recognition of something profound, that energy flows between us, shaping not only how we live, but how we understand life itself. Energy does not belong only to life on Earth. It moves on scales so vast that even the grandest human economies seem like pocket change. The universe itself is a theatre of energy flows, from the faint whispers of cosmic background radiation to the violent brilliance of exploding stars. To see the cosmos clearly is to recognize that energy is its language, its currency, its pulse. Stars, galaxies, and black holes all participate in a cosmic economy that has been unfolding for billions of years. Consider a star. To the eye, it may seem like a point of steady light, but in truth, it is a nuclear bank, a vault where hydrogen atoms are constantly fused into helium. This fusion releases extraordinary amounts of energy, radiating outward as light and heat. Our own sun, modest compared to many stars, pours out more energy every second than humanity has consumed in all of history. And it has done so for billions of years without pause. Stars are not burning in the ordinary sense, they are engines of nuclear alchemy, taking the simplest element in the universe and turning it into the wealth that fuels planets, life, and everything we see. This stellar banking system is remarkably balanced. Gravity pulls inward, trying to collapse the star, while the outward pressure of released energy holds it up. As long as there is fuel to fuse, the star remains stable, a glowing sphere suspended between collapse and explosion. The sun is in this middle age of stellar economics, steadily spending its hydrogen reserves. Larger stars, though, are spendthrifts. They burn through their accounts far faster, glowing brighter but living shorter lives. Small stars like red dwarfs are frugal, sipping at their hydrogen so slowly that they may last for trillions of years. Each star's lifespan is a reflection of its energy habits, its budgeting style in the grand cosmic ledger. Eventually, however, every star must face insolvency. When the hydrogen runs low, the balance tips. The core contracts, temperatures soar, and new fusion processes ignite, producing heavier elements. The star swells into a red giant, shedding layers into space. For smaller stars, the end is quiet. They exhale their outer shells into glowing nebulae, leaving behind dense white dwarfs. But for massive stars, the finale is nothing short of spectacular, a supernova, the ultimate cosmic spending spree. A supernova releases more energy in a few weeks than the Sun will emit in its entire lifetime. The explosion hurls material across space, scattering elements forged in the star's heart: carbon, oxygen, iron, and beyond. These are the ingredients of planets, oceans, and living beings. In this sense, supernovae are not wasteful extravagances, but essential investments. They seed the cosmos with raw materials for future worlds. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe were all minted in the nuclear accounts of ancient stars and distributed by their final, extravagant outbursts. Every living body is proof that cosmic energy does not vanish but circulates endlessly, changing form and purpose. Beyond individual stars, galaxies themselves are vast networks of energy flows. Billions of stars shine together, their combined light filling interstellar space. Within galaxies, gas clouds collapse under gravity, sparking new stars and renewing the cycle. Black holes, the great paradoxes of energy, lurk in galactic centers, swallowing matter, yet also releasing jets of energy that can span thousands of light years. These outflows regulate the growth of galaxies, preventing them from collapsing under unchecked star formation. Even in the darkest corners of the cosmos, energy is never still. It is stored, released, redirected, and transformed on scales so immense they defy imagination. Cosmic energy also follows deep rules of balance. The universe began with an extraordinary burst of energy in the Big Bang, a surge so vast it created space and time themselves. Since then, energy has been dispersing, flowing outward as the universe expands. Stars form and shine, but always by converting concentrated energy into more diffuse radiation. Supernovae blaze brilliantly, but leave behind quieter remnants. Even black holes, once thought to trap energy forever, may slowly leak it away through Hawking radiation. Everywhere, the story is one of transformation. Concentrated energy becomes dispersed, ordered structures give way to entropy. Yet in the process, new complexity emerges. On human scales, it is easy to think of energy as something we control, harnessing it with wires, engines, and grids. But in the cosmic view, humanity is a small player in a much grander system. The sunlight that warms the skin began in the heart of the sun millions of years ago. The atoms that make up the body were born in stars that died long before Earth even existed. The energy flowing through every thought and breath is a continuation of flows that began at the dawn of the universe. We are, in essence, temporary accounts in the cosmic economy, borrowing energy for a time before returning it to the system. There is something both humbling and uplifting in this realization. The stars above are not distant ornaments, but participants in the same energy dance that sustains us. Their nuclear banks fund the possibility of life. Their explosions spread the wealth of elements. Their light journeys across unimaginable distances to touch our retinas. The cosmos is not silent, but filled with exchanges, transactions, and flows, all governed by the quiet rule that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only changed. If supernovae are the fireworks of cosmic spending, then galaxies are the markets, and the universe itself is the ledger. It tracks every joule, every photon, every burst and whisper. From the first light after the Big Bang to the glow of distant quasars, energy is the universal currency, flowing ceaselessly, shaping worlds, and weaving existence itself. The deep balance of cosmic energy reminds us that we are part of this flow, not apart from it. Our lives are local expressions of a universal principle, small yet connected to the greatest of scales. To look up at the night sky is to see energy in motion, past and present layered together. Each star is a glowing account book, each nebula a deposit of potential, each black hole a strange and paradoxical vault. The cosmos is alive with energy flows, and we are among the countless beneficiaries. To exist at all is to participate in this economy, to borrow a little starlight, spend it on the acts of living, and eventually return it to the grand circulation of the universe. In the story of energy, there is one rule that is never broken. Entropy always increases. It is the quiet law written into the fabric of the universe, the one that ensures order gives way to disorder, that concentrated energy disperses, and that every flame eventually flickers out. In physics, entropy is often described as disorder, but it may be easier to think of it as the gradual draining of the cosmic budget. Each transaction spends a little more of the useful energy until, in the very far future, there is nothing left to spend. At first, this idea may sound unsettling. The thought that the universe itself has an ending, not with a bang but with a gentle sigh, can feel strange. But the concept of heat death, the ultimate balancing of the energy books, is less about destruction and more about inevitability. It is not fire and collapse, but a quiet evening of the cosmos, when all usable energy has been shared, exchanged, and smoothed into evenness. Right now, the universe is busy with transactions. Stars fuse hydrogen, pouring out light. Supernovae explode, scattering elements. Black holes spin and galaxies glow. Everywhere, energy flows from places of concentration to places of emptiness. But each of these flows is also a loss. When energy is transformed, some of it slips into forms less useful for work, dissipating as heat, spreading as faint radiation. The second law of thermodynamics guarantees this outcome. Energy is never destroyed, but its quality, its usefulness, diminishes. Like coins that grow smaller each time they are exchanged, energy gradually erodes into forms that can no longer fund activity. If the universe were a grand banquet, entropy would be the scattering of crumbs, the spreading of aromas, the eventual cooling of dishes. At first, everything is rich, full, and vibrant. But as the meal continues, food is eaten, plates are emptied, and warmth fades from the room. The party does not end suddenly. It simply grows quieter until only faint traces remain. In trillions upon trillions of years, stars will exhaust their nuclear reserves. The skies, once brilliant with starlight, will grow dim. Galaxies will no longer sparkle with new stars forming from nebulae, because the raw material will be gone or too diffuse to ignite. What remains will be long-lived embers, faint white dwarfs, cooling neutron stars, and the dark giants of black holes. These will shine weakly, then fade further, surrendering their heat to the vastness. Even black holes, once thought eternal, are not immune to this fate. Through a process known as Hawking radiation, they will slowly leak their energy into space, evaporating over inconceivable timescales. The largest of them may last for googles of years, but even they will eventually dissolve. The universe, patient and steady, will continue its balancing act until every volt of concentrated energy is emptied into the common pool of diffuse heat. At that point, nothing will change in any dramatic way. There will be no great catastrophe, no sudden collapse. Instead, the universe will simply enter a state where everything is spread thin and evenly. Energy will still exist, scattered as low-level radiation, but there will be no gradients left to exploit, no differences in temperature or pressure to drive motion. Without those differences, nothing happens. No stars shine, no chemistry reacts, no life stirs. The cosmic economy of energy will reach its final balance, perfect stillness, a state of quiet equilibrium. This vision is known as heat death, though the name is misleading. It is not heat in the fiery sense, but rather the absence of usable heat. Everything is lukewarm, uniform even. It is not destruction, but sameness. A calm, infinite night where every coin of energy has been exchanged so many times that no more work can be done. There is something haunting, but also peaceful in this thought. The universe began with a burst of concentrated energy, a hot and ordered state that poured out possibilities. It will end in quiet evenness, the ledger balanced, the accounts settled. Every star that ever burned, every planet that ever spun, every life that ever blossomed will have been part of the great spending spree of existence. In the end, All of it contributes to the final balance. For human minds trained to think in years or centuries, these timescales are almost impossible to imagine. The numbers stretch beyond comprehension. But perhaps that is where the gentleness lies. Heat death is not something to fear, because it is so far beyond the reach of our world, our species, even our galaxy. It is less a prediction than a meditation, a reminder that all things, no matter how vast, follow cycles of rising, spending, and settling. Seen this way, entropy is not an enemy but a teacher. It reminds us of impermanence, that energy, once spent, cannot be fully reclaimed. It urges us to value the concentrated forms we have now, the starlight that warms Earth, the food that sustains bodies, the moments of vitality that fill our days. The knowledge that everything drifts toward evenness gives poignancy to the brightness of the present. Stars shine all the more beautifully because they will not shine forever. Life is precious precisely because it borrows its fuel from fleeting gradients. It is almost poetic to think that the universe itself is a story of energy being shared until all accounts are even. From galaxies blazing with power to the faint cooling of dust, each stage is part of the same journey. The cosmos does not end with violence, but with calm, a great stillness that holds within it the memory of everything that came before. When people speak of impermanence in their own lives, they often find comfort in cycles, the turning of seasons, the rise and fall of tides, the passing of days into nights. The fate of the universe may be no different, just written on a scale so vast that it is hard to comprehend. In its final balance, the cosmos will become quiet, but not meaningless. It will be the grand culmination of all the flows of energy, the last page of a book that was full of fire, light, and motion. And so, the concept of heat death is less a warning than a lullaby. It tells us that nothing lasts forever, but that everything has its place in the flow. Stars will spend their fuel, galaxies will fade, black holes will vanish, and at last the universe will rest. In the meantime, we live in the vibrant middle of the story, when energy still rushes and shines, when life can flourish in its borrowed brightness. That is the true gift of impermanence, not despair at the ending, but wonder at the fact that the story is happening now. Energy is not only the invisible current that fuels stars and cells, it is also the thread that weaves meaning into human life. Beyond equations and measurements, energy becomes metaphor, a way to understand love, motion, purpose, and the fragile beauty of existence. To speak of energy is to speak of vitality itself, the quiet flame that moves through every living being and every fleeting moment. Think of the way people describe love. It sparks, it glows, it warms, it ignites. The language of energy is never far away, because love itself feels like a force that cannot be seen, yet changes everything it touches. Friendships, too, are often spoken of as exchanges of energy. Some relationships lift and restore, while others drain and deplete. We instinctively sense that what we share with one another is more than words or actions. It is a transfer of vitality, an invisible current binding one life to another. Motion itself, whether in the physical world or in the heart, is powered by energy. A bird lifts from the branch and arcs across the sky, its wings beating with the power of sunlight transformed into muscle. A dancer spins across a stage, body alive with grace that seems to defy weight. A thought leaps from one neuron to another, carrying an idea that may change a life. In all these cases, energy is the bridge between possibility and action. Without it, the world is static. With it, life becomes a moving poem. Philosophers have long turned to energy as a metaphor for existence. Some see it as the vital force, the breath that animates matter. Others imagine it as the eternal flow, never created, never destroyed, always moving from one form to another. In this way, energy mirrors the cycles of birth and death, joy and sorrow, beginnings and endings. Nothing is ever lost, only changed. The laughter of childhood becomes the wisdom of age, just as the light of a star becomes the elements of a planet. The poetry lies not in permanence but in transformation. Even in silence and stillness, energy is present. The heartbeat at rest, the slow inhale of breath, the faint shimmer of thoughts drifting into dreams, all are subtle manifestations of motion. Sleep itself is not an absence, but a rhythm of conservation, a nightly pause where energy gathers itself again. In stillness, one feels the quiet pulse of the universe, the background hum that continues no matter how calm the surface appears. The beauty of energy is its dual nature. It is precise enough to be measured in joules and calories, yet elusive enough to inspire awe and metaphor. It is as real as the electricity in a lamp, and as intangible as the warmth of kindness shared between friends. It is the reason stars shine, and the reason people say someone lights up a room. Energy bridges science and poetry, existing comfortably in both. Perhaps this is why energy often feels like a mirror for the soul. When people say they feel drained, they are describing more than fatigue. They are acknowledging a deeper emptiness, a dimming of inner light. When they say they feel energized, they mean more than physical stamina. They are recognizing a surge of possibility, a brightness that colors everything they do. Energy, in this sense, is both scientific and spiritual, a way to describe what it means to be fully alive. On cosmic scales, energy writes the story of existence. Stars burn, galaxies swirl, black holes feed, and all of it is motion, exchange, and transformation. On human scales, energy writes the story of days. Meals are eaten, thoughts are born, laughter rises, footsteps carry bodies forward. Whether in galaxies or in moments, the principle is the same. Energy flows, and in its flowing, life happens. To see energy as poetry is to see unity and diversity. The glow of fireflies in a summer night, the rush of waves against the shore, the spark of inspiration that changes a life's direction. All are expressions of the same underlying force. Energy is not separate from us, it is us. The body is sunlight rearranged. The mind is electrical storms in miniature. The heart is a rhythmic engine that never ceases its beat. Every gesture, every smile, every breath is the spending of energy that began in stars long ago. There is also comfort in the thought that energy never dies. When a flame burns out, its heat is not gone but dispersed into the air. When a life ends, the energy that sustained it returns to the broader flow, recycled into soil, air, and memory. The forms change, but the current continues. This continuity can be seen not as loss, but as a gentle reassurance. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost, everything is part of the greater circulation of existence. If the universe is, one day, destined for stillness, then perhaps that final balance is not tragedy, but peace. Until then, the poetry of energy is found in the way stars blaze, planets orbit, and hearts continue their steady rhythm. Life is the momentary borrowing of that current, a brief but astonishing chance to feel the warmth of sunlight, the rush of wind, the comfort of connection. To exist at all is to participate in this luminous exchange. And so, when people speak of energy in metaphor, they are not being fanciful. They are reaching for the deepest truth available, that everything we love, everything we know, everything we are is woven from the same invisible flow. Energy is not just the power of physics, it is the quiet music of existence, the fire in stars, the spark in love, the motion in every breath. To recognize this is to close the story not with fear or loss, but with calm awe, a recognition that we are part of something vast, endless, and beautifully alive. Energy has carried us from the flicker of firelight to the glow of galaxies. Through every chapter of existence it has appeared under different names: warmth, light, motion, life, power. Yet at its heart it has always been the same. It is the single thread running through everything. the one true universal currency that binds together atoms, stars, and souls. To speak of energy is to speak of the universe's most honest account book, the flow that balances every action with consequence, every exchange with transformation. From the very first spark after the birth of the cosmos, energy has been in motion. It expanded with space itself, scattering into matter and radiation, forming stars that fused elements and scattering those elements again in great cosmic fireworks. The planets, the oceans, the trees, and even the air we breathe are products of this endless circulation. On Earth, sunlight falls upon green leaves, captured and transformed into sugars. Those sugars fuel bodies, thoughts, and actions, and then return eventually to soil and sky. The cycle is ceaseless, the current unbroken. Humanity has learned to name and measure this flow, to budget and harness it, to celebrate and even abuse it. Fire gave warmth, food, and stories. Farming gave surplus, stored sunlight piled into granaries that became the bedrock of civilization. Fossil fuels opened vaults of ancient energy, powering machines and cities, but leaving behind debts that still ripple through climate and sea. Electricity became the most flexible of all. Energy summoned at will, flowing invisibly through wires to light homes, spin motors, and carry voices across the globe. Renewable energy now invites a return to harmony, asking us to live on the steady income of the sun, the wind, and the earth itself, rather than on the dwindling inheritance of buried time. Through it all, energy has shaped not only the physical world, but also the world of meaning. In our languages and cultures, we borrow its imagery to describe strength, vitality, and spirit. Myths told of gods who controlled fire and lightning. Rituals lit flames to honor continuity. Everyday speech hums with metaphors of sparks, vibes, currents, and drains. Without realizing it, we recognize energy not only as a scientific concept, but as the closest thing we have to describing life itself. Even within our bodies, energy is the currency of survival. Metabolism tallies the budget of calories spent on breath, heartbeat, and thought. Muscles demand their share in motion, while the brain insists on its lavish portion, consuming more than its size would suggest. Sleep restores balance, the nightly audit that keeps accounts from running into deficit. To be alive is to be a manager of energy, investing, saving, and spending in the quiet economy of existence. And when we look beyond ourselves, energy becomes the author of evolution. Creatures great and small are shaped by its demands. Dinosaurs stretching necks to graze high trees, hummingbirds whirring at impossible speeds, humans learning to cook and farm and share. All are reflections of how life negotiates its energy budgets. Survival has never been about brute strength alone, but about efficiency, about the art of spending no more than what can be earned. The cosmos, too, is ruled by the same law. Stars are nuclear banks. Galaxies are markets of exchange. Supernovae are extravagant bursts of spending that enrich the universe with new wealth. Black holes seem like vaults that hoard, yet even they leak energy slowly, paying back what they consumed. And always, entropy ticks forward, the cosmic accountant ensuring that no transaction is free, that every act of order comes with a cost, and that one day, in the farthest reaches of time, the budget will balance in stillness. This story might sound immense and impersonal, but it is also deeply intimate. You are part of it simply by existing, by breathing, by listening. The energy flowing through your body right now was once sunlight, captured in plants, passed into food, and transformed into thoughts and dreams. Even the electricity carrying these words to you is part of the same current, a dance of electrons that began long ago in a star and now hums through a circuit to reach your ears. By taking part in this moment, you have joined the great exchange. There is something humbling in realizing that wealth, in its truest form, is not measured in coins, possessions, or numbers on a screen. It is measured in energy, in the calories that sustain life, the watts that power invention, the sunlight that warms the earth. Money may represent wealth, but energy is wealth itself, the universal currency that cannot be faked or inflated. To recognize this is to peel away illusion and see the world more clearly. And yet, for all its precision, energy is also poetry. It is why we say someone shines, why we sense good or bad vibes, why we feel moved by sparks of inspiration. Energy gives us language to describe what cannot be pinned down, the ineffable qualities of life, love, and connection. It bridges the measurable and the mysterious, existing both in the calculations of physics and in the metaphors of the heart. As this exploration draws to a close, it is worth pausing in calm reflection. Energy surrounds you, moves through you, and will continue long after you're gone. The same current that fuels stars fuels your breath. The same entropy that governs galaxies governs the rhythm of your days. To be alive is to borrow energy for a time, to spend it in laughter, movement, thought, and love, and then to return it to the cycle. Nothing is wasted, nothing is lost, everything flows. So let this gentle truth settle over you. You are part of the vast circulation, a temporary account in the universe's eternal economy. The warmth you feel, the thoughts you carry, the quiet you rest in, all are transactions in the great cosmic ledger. And just by listening, you have taken part in this exchange, receiving energy in the form of ideas, and perhaps sending a little back in curiosity or wonder. May that thought bring calm awe. The story of energy is not just the story of physics or biology, but the story of being itself. It is the poetry of existence, the balance of all things, the gentle current that binds stars, bodies, and souls. And as the universe continues its endless flow, so too does the energy within you, moving, transforming, and reminding you, always, that you are part of the one true universal currency.